My name is Madison Taylor, and in this video today, we are going to be talking about how exactly you want to mark up your product. Whether you're selling a luxury product, a middle grade, high end, we're kind of going to be discussing how a business would typically mark up a product, and then why we usually see luxury brands that are at a higher price point. So if you like this video, we're going to be making this into a series where we talk about business and also different fashion trends as well. So definitely give the video a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Let's get into it. Let's talk about how a business would go ahead and buy a product to go mark up. So one method a business could use is they would actually purchase a product from an existing brand or source, and they would mark up that product to make a profit on. So let's just use an example of a brand that's buying a pair of shoes, for example. They might be an apparel company and or a retailer, and they want to buy a pair of shoes to sell to their customers. So the first option is that they would need to go ahead and source that pair of shoes. So they can either buy a pair of shoes online from an existing brand, they might private label that pair of shoes, or they could go to different avenues of online sourcing. They might use AliExpress or Alibaba or different kind of global trade sourcing platforms where they can actually buy a product and then mark it up for a profit. So let's say you use the example of a business buying an existing brand. Let's again say it's a shoe that I'm buying and I own a business. Let's say I'm a shoe store and I'm looking to buy a new pair of Adidas shoes to then sell to my customers. So the first thing I would do is I would source that pair of Adidas shoes directly from the brand and buy it at a wholesale price. This is usually a discounted price that I myself as the store would make a purchase from at the cost level and then mark it up to my customers at the end. So brands themselves will set what's called an MSRP, and this stands for Manufacturer Suggested Retail Price. And this is the cost that the brand typically recommends from the stores or their buyers to mark the product up to. It could be a 2 times markup, 3 times markup. It really depends on the product and what the brand will set that design. Going back to the example of the pair of shoes, let's say I buy that pair of Adidas shoes and I pay $50 at the wholesale price. I would then, the MSRP price is set at $100. So again, I would make a 50% profit on those pair of shoes that I would buy to the customers. And again, some brands, depending on who they are, they don't want you to go over the desired MSRP because either they sell at a global scale, international, whatever it might be. They don't want any brand to differentiate itself between one store and the other. That's why they use the MSRP as a suggested price. So let's talk about the other option, which is definitely a lot more trickier for brands, especially if your brand just starting out, and that is buying a product that either you yourself create, you private label, or that's under your own brand in some kind of shape or form. Either you're doing the technical designing, you develop a new product, and there's not anything out there that you can compare that product pricing to because you yourself are the brand that's setting that product price. So the first step that I would do is you got to figure out what exactly are the costs involved. So sometimes it's called what's landed duty cost, and that's basically everything. It's your cost, it's your shipping, any duties that you might pay if you're importing them into the country. That is your total cost. What you want to really figure out is a solid number, which then you can mark up to get your desired MSRP. So when we talk about a total cost for a product, let's just use the example across the board of a pair of shoes. There's a lot that goes into manufacturing that shoes. There's labor costs, there's design, there's technical processes, there's marketing. There's a lot of different processes that go into those pair of shoes. Some costs you might have an idea of what they are, such as the manufacturer price, the cost it takes you to actually manufacture the product. And some you might just have to get an estimate to, so such as marketing, maybe some shipping, maybe some duties. You really kind of have to ball game it and estimate what the total cost of that product is. So let's just, again, use the pair of shoes as an example. Let's say my total cost, including my labor and my marketing and my time and all that, I basically cost me, let's make it simple, say $50 to manufacture the shoe all in. So that's what my cost is, right? So we have to look at a total model to determine what my overall. When you determine your cost, now the one thing you want to determine is if you plan on manufacturing this product to other retailers, such as let's again use the example of Adidas. You would be Adidas in this case, and you plan to manufacture that product and go into have your brand in other retailers just to size your store, because that's going to be a little bit different of pricing that you have to reverse engineer the math versus just setting it for your own store, correct? So let's just say we're going to make it and do the whole model. We're going to make a product, we're going to sell it to other brands, and we're also going to sell it to our own store as well. So let's just say, again, the cost of the shoe is $50. So what I would typically do for wholesale is I would mark it up one time on top of that. So if I have a $50 shoe, I want to mark that shoe up to $100 to my wholesale clients, because this could be the shoe store that's looking to buy a pair of products and sell it again at a desired MSRP. This could be any big name, chain department stores or anyone they're going to mark up the product to. But you as your brand, that's what you're getting as a cost back to your business, which would be that wholesale price if you're going to manufacture it and sell it to other stores and other brands that are looking to carry. So let's talk about now what happens after you have your wholesale pricing. So my original cost is $50. That's what it cost me to manufacture the product. I mark it up to my wholesalers and say it's $100. Now those wholesalers are going to want to obviously make a profit on those pair of shoes. So then the wholesalers will look to you to create a desired MSRP price. So the MSRP price, typically, again, it depends on the brand. Let's say you mark it up again one time on top of that. So that $100 pair of shoes that the wholesalers would buy from, you're going to say the desired MSRP is a $200 price point for those pair of shoes. So the retailer would make $100. And then again, if you're going to sell it at your brand level, let's say you have an independent store outside of the wholesale, you also want to make sure that the MSRP is uniform across the board. You don't want to have a different price in your brand that someone in a bigger box name store or another store across the country that you wholesale it would have. So you want to make sure that the MSRP is very consistent across how you're going to be pricing your product. Let's say this shoe that we create, let's call the brand Madison Taylor. So Madison Taylor, I manufacture the pair of shoes. Again, for $50. I sell to my other stores who are looking to carry the Madison Taylor shoes for $100. But my price point, if I have a store called Madison Taylor, either it's e-commerce or brick and mortar, I would then have to sell those pair of shoes for $200 to make sure that my other accounts that I sell to wholesale, it's uniform across the board. So again, you have to take that into consideration. The good thing as a brand when you create a product and sell it to other stores is that you are getting a higher markup than what you would just do directly, because if you manufacture for $50 and you sell for $200, you get a pretty good price point versus just on the wholesale price where you're only making that $50 profit. So again, this is all things you have to take in consideration when you're actually marking up. So with products, sometimes you're going to know a number, right? You might actually know your actual cost to manufacture that product. Well, some numbers you might unfortunately just have to kind of guesstimate. What's your cost of marketing? What's your cost of shipping? Your overall cost of labor? What I find that usually works best for me is if I can use a similar product or find an example somewhere and just kind of reverse engineer the math and try to divide it up per unit. Because when you buy these products, you might be buying 100 units, a couple thousand units, maybe a couple 100,000 units at the time there too. So you have to kind of reverse engineer the math and work backwards and find what the cost per unit is, and just estimate the overall cost based on that. Because really what overall you're trying to find is that desired markup to give you an MSRP and where you want to be at. So for example, let's say I want to have a desired MSRP of $100, right? Again, let's keep the math simple. We have to reverse engineer that number to figure out, okay, I need to make at least a 2 times markup of my products. So I have to figure out all the costs to get to that 2 times markup of what I want to make as a profit. So again, you have to figure out what your total cost is. Sometimes, depending on your business and how it works, your manufacturer might ask you for your desired MSRP so that they can reverse engineer the math and figure out what all the total cost is to give you as close as you can to that desired MSRP. And again, MSRP might change just depending on the market, what the product is, the materials. Where you manufacture the product is also a big consideration, as some countries typically have cheaper labor than they would do in other countries. So again, a lot of it is really determined about the product and the service or whatever you're trying to mark up is. It's really hard to say, just on one brand over the other, because they might just have different price. Depending on the country, you also have to consider duties on the product. So this does depend on the volume and the value of the goods that you're producing, and that's what you have to estimate into your overall shipping cost. Shipping is another big consideration, and as we've seen over the past couple of years, especially with the rise of COVID, the shipping costs have dramatically increased across the world, basically. And so that's really what's driving up a lot of the costs on products, either raw goods or finished goods. The cost of shipping is just astronomically higher than it was, and brands themselves have to take that cost in consideration when doing their markups. So that's where we see the rise of a lot of these price points, either luxury goods, midpoint, or regular. But you do have to take in consideration where you're shipping these goods from, because let's use the example of the US. If I ship some from Mexico, for example, my shipping costs are going to be a lot less than they would be if I'm going to ship something from China. So again, that is another price point consideration that you have to take when you're looking to create your design. So lastly, what I would say is you also have to consider what I like to call value add pricing. So this could be something just besides, your raw cost or labor. It's the perception of what customers will pay for that brand. So luxury brands typically will use kind of this value add pricing when they're pricing their products. So for example, let's take a pair of canvas sneakers, right? The costs are relatively low. It's canvas, it's not real leather, so the material costs are going to be a little bit different. If I, as a brand that's maybe not as well heard of, I might manufacture that shoe and create a desired MSRP at $200. Now, if Louis Vuitton, which is a well-known French designer across the world, creates that same exact product using the same materials, they might MSRP the product at well over $1,500. And that's what we want to call value add pricing. It's the price point that consumers will think in their mind they will pay more for a product if it is that specific brand name. And again, luxury brands, this is typically how they price out their product. It's not that the material any better, it's you're paying for the brand name, the image, and that's what's called value add pricing. So depending on your brand and what kind of price point you're looking at in your marketing, you might be able to charge a little bit more than brands that are maybe on the smaller scale or you might not heard of. So I hope these comments and overall tips really help you and your business define how you want to price your products. Pricing, again, isn't an easy thing to do. There's a lot that goes into it. Sometimes it's just trial and error and you might have to refine your pricing over time. I could say as a business, we went through our pricing and I would say maybe every 6 months or a year, we do evaluate where we need to be at price point wise. Stuff might go up just depending on, manufactured goods, cost, labor, and that's also some considerations that you have to take into as well. Pricing is never going to be a one and done kind of situation. It's always something that you as a business owner constantly have to look at is your pricing model. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate you taking the time to hear more about the pricing models and tips and tricks from a business owner on how we just price our products and the different strategies. So if you like this video, definitely give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Again, we're going to be making this just series about different tips and tricks on different standpoints of business as well as fashion. I'm in the fashion industry, so it kind of makes sense to tie them together. But again, like this video, give the channel a subscription, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks, guys.